Page 55. You can turn to face me if you want. You can follow along and listen quietly, or you can follow along by reading with me in the book as we go. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about what happened in our last chapter. It was, or 2 chapters ago actually. There was some bad news. Who can think back and remember what was the bad news that we learned about in chapter 7? Think to yourself for a second, what was the bad news? What do you think, Rosalia?
The bad news was that it was Christmas that they're going to have to cook Wilbur.
They're going to have to cook Wilbur. Again, if you're thinking the same thing, you've given me too, Rosalia. Remember the bad news was that Wilbur. Oh, Devin, I see some disagreeing. Are you disagreeing? What do you remember the bad news to be?
I remember the bad news was they were making him fat to eat on cooking.
So that's kind of just like Rosalio's. You're saying that the bad news is that the reason they're making him fatten up is so that they can eat. Okay, let's go back to chapter 9. Today, I'm going to stop us at one point, and we're going to talk about a turning point in this chapter. And a turning point is when a character feels one way, and then something happens, and all of a sudden their emotions change. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to a turning point in the chapter. Here we go. Wilbur's boast. A spider's web is stronger than it looks. Although it is made of thin, delicate strands, the web is not easily broken. Delicate. Although it is made of thin, delicate strands, the web is not easily broken. What does delicate mean? Look at the context of the book. Devin, what do you think delicate means?
I think it means not easily to be broken.
Mm-hmm.
Or hard.
What makes you think that? Did you just know that, or did you use the text to help you?
I think it means it's hard to break.
That it's hard to break? What do you think, Amicus?
I disagree with Devin because delicate actually means it's
That it is easy to break? What makes you think that? Let's use some clues from the text. Let's read the sentence again. Although it is made of thin and delicate strands, it is not easy to be broken. What are you thinking, Chelsea? Never mind. Sophia?
When it says that, I think delicate means that it's easy to break because even it says although although it is made of thin, delicate strands, the web is not easily broken.
Yeah. Plus, what do we know about spiders' webs? Do they break easily?
Yes.
Yeah. They're delicate. Okay, let's keep going. However, a web gets torn every day by the insects that kick around in it, and a spider must rebuild it when it gets full of holes. Charlotte liked to do her weaving in the late afternoon, and Fern liked to sit nearby and watch. One afternoon, she heard a most interesting conversation and witnessed a strange event. "You have awfully hairy legs, Charlotte," said Wilbur as the spider busily worked at her task. "My legs are hairy for a good reason," replied Charlotte. "Furthermore, each leg of mine has 7 sections: the coxa, the trochanter, the femur, the patella, the tibia, the metatarsus, and the tarsus." 7 sections. Let's try and picture that for a second. Imagine if your arm had 7 sections. How many sections do humans' arms have?
2.
Let's look. 1, 2. Maybe you could count the hand as like another piece of section.
That's basically the wrist.
A wrist. So you're saying maybe this counts as part of the arm, but maybe it doesn't. So maybe 2, maybe 3 if you count the hand. Imagine if our arms had 7 sections.
1, 2.
It's
like fractions.
It's like fractions. We could split up our arms into 7 sections. I wonder if spiders' arms are in 7 equal sections. Sasha, maybe we'll have to look that up later. Let's keep reading. Waiting. Wilbur sat bolt upright. "You're kidding," he said. "No, I'm not either. Say those names again. I didn't catch them the first time." "Coxa, trochanter, femur, patella, tibia, metatarsus, and tarsus." "Goodness," said Wilbur, looking down at his own chubby legs. "I don't think my legs have 7 sections." "Well," said Charlotte, "you and I lead different different lives. You don't have to spin a web. That takes real legwork. I could spin a web if I tried, said Wilbur, boasting. I've just never tried. Let's see you do it, said Charlotte. Fern chuckled softly, and her eyes grew wide with love for the pig. Show me eyes wide with love. Oh. Okay, replied Wilbur. You coach me and I'll spin one. It must be a lot of fun to spin a web. How do I start? Take a deep breath, said Charlotte, smiling. Wilbur breathed deeply. Now climb to the highest place you can get to, like this. Charlotte raced up to the top of the doorway. Wilbur scrambled to the top of the manure pile. Very good, said Charlotte. Now, make an attachment with your spinnerets, hurl yourself into space, and let out a drag line as you go. What are spinnerets? What are spinnerets, Jesus?
Like webs?
They're kind of like webs. I have a picture to show you. It's not on.
On the bunches.
Oh, this doesn't require any talking. Waiting patiently for my picture. What are you thinking, Atticus?
The spinnerets are things on the spider's butt that make webs.
But I'm going to show you a picture of what this looks like. Do pigs have spinnerets?
No.
Do you think that Wilbur's going to be able to? Oops, sorry. Because they both have. Let's listen. Jesus just said something to me. He says they both have different lives. What do you mean by that, Jesus?
Because Wilbur is a pig and Charlotte is a. I can't say.
It's fine. And Charlotte is a spider. Leslie, do you have something to add to that?
What? Can you turn off the lights?
Can you see the spinnerets on there?
Yes.
It's coming right out of here, out of the back of the spider, and it's using it to spin a cocoon around its prey. It's also how it can make a web. Oh, there it goes. We're going to keep going, Sasha. I'll come back to your comment. That's a problem we can solve later. Wilbur hesitated a moment, then jumped out into the air. He glanced hastily behind to see if a piece of rope was following him to check his fall. But nothing seemed to be happening in his rear. And the next thing he knew, he landed with a thump. Oomph, he grunted. Was Wilbur able to spin a web?
No.
Charlotte laughed so hard, her web began to sway. What did I do wrong? Asked the pig when he recovered from his bump. Nothing, said Charlotte. It was a nice try. I think I'll try again, said Wilbur cheerfully. I believe what I need is a little piece of string to hold me. The pig walked out to his yard. You there, Templeton, he called. The rat poked his head out from under the trough. Got a little piece of string I could borrow? Asked Wilbur. I need it to spin a web. Yes, indeed, replied Templeton, who saved string. No trouble at all. Anything to oblige. He crept down into his hole, pushed the goose egg out of the way, and returned with an old piece of dirty white string. Wilbur examined it. That's just the thing, he said. Tie one end to my tail, will you, Templeton? Wilbur crouched low, with his thin, curly tail toward the rat. Templeton seized the string, passed it around the end of the pig's tail, and tied it in 2 half stitches. It's a type of knot. Charlotte watched in delight. Like Fern, she was truly fond of Wilbur, whose smelly pen and stale food attracted the flies that she needed. And she was proud to see that he was not a quitter, and was willing to try again to spin a web. While the rat and the spider and the little girl watched, Wilbur climbed again to the top of the manure pile, full of energy and hope. Everybody watch, he cried, and summoning all his strength, he threw himself into the air, head first. The string trailed behind him, but as he had neglected to fasten the other end to anything, it didn't really do any good, and Wilbur landed with a thud, crashed and hurt. Tears came to his eyes. Templeton grinned. Charlotte just sat quietly. What does he mean he neglected? What did he neglect to do? What did he neglect to do? Let's read that part again. But as he had neglected to fasten the other end to anything.
To put the other end to tie the end.
Sasha, what are you thinking?
I think that he neglected to tying the other end to stuff, to
So he didn't. So if he has one end tied to his tail, he neglected or didn't tie the end to something else to catch him. So he just had a string following him through the air. Yes, Nathan?
Also, Templeton was acting kindly because he just wanted to laugh at Wilbur.
Maybe he just wanted to laugh at Wilbur. Okay, let's keep reading. After a bit, she spoke. You can't spin a web, Wilbur, and I advise you to put the idea out of your mind. You lack 2 things needed for spinning a web. What are they? Asked Wilbur sadly. You lack a set of spinnerets, just like we learned about, and you lack know-how. But cheer up, you don't need a web. Zuckerman supplies you with 3 big meals a day. Why should you worry about trapping food? Wilbur sighed. You're ever so much cleverer and brighter than I am, Charlotte. I guess I was just trying to show off. Serves me right. Templeton untied his string and took it back to his home. Charlotte returned to her weaving. You don't need to feel too badly, Wilbur, she said. Not many creatures can spin webs. Even men aren't as good at it as spiders, although they think they're pretty good, and they'll try anything. Did you ever hear of the Queensboro Bridge? Wilbur shook his head. Is it a web? Sort of, replied Charlotte, but do you know how long it took men to build it? 8 whole years. My goodness, I would have starved to death waiting that long. I can make a web in a single evening. What do people catch in the Queensboro Bridge? Bugs? Asked Wilbur. Let's look for a second at the Queensboro Bridge.
Is it even real?
Yeah.
It is, it's a real bridge.
They catch people.
They catch cars.
Whoa.
This is the Queensboro Bridge. Let's look at a picture where we can kind of see
It
it.
looks like the Brooklyn Bridge.
Do you see it right there?
That's cool.
It is
Where is
cool.
it? Where is it?
It's in New York, I believe.
Oh,
It's in New York?
I think so.
I think it's in New York. Let's look at this bridge for a second. Why do you think Charlotte might have compared this bridge to a web? Try to talk to somebody next to you. Why do you think she might have compared this bridge to a web?
Because it looks like one. See those lines?
Turning back in 3 and 2. Voices will be off in 1. Fabiola, what are you thinking?
That probably is comparing the web to because on the sides of it, it kind of looks like it's a web.
It kind of looks like a web. If you and your partner talked about something similar, you give a me too to Fabiola. We'll solve that next time. Wilbur just asked if humans use this bridge to catch webs.
Catch what?
To catch bugs. Was Wilbur correct? Do we use bridges to catch bugs? No. So do webs and bridges have the same purpose?
No.
But they can look kind of similar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's keep reading.
They're catching cars.
No, said Charlotte. They don't catch anything. They just keep trotting back and forth across the bridge thinking there's something better on the other side. If they'd hang head down at the top of the thing and wait quietly, maybe something good would come along. But no, with men it's rush, 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 rush every minute. I'm glad I'm a sedentary spider. What does sedentary mean? Asked Wilbur. Means I sit still a good part of the time, and I don't go wandering all over creation. I know a good thing when I see it, and my web is a good thing. I stay put and wait for what comes. Gives me a chance to think. Well, I'm sort of sedentary myself, I guess, said the pig. I have to hang around here whether I want to or not. You know where I'd really like to be this evening? Where? In a forest, looking for beech nuts and truffles and delectable roots, pushing leaves aside with my wonderful strong nose, searching and sniffing along the ground, smelling, smelling, smelling. You smell just the way you are, remarked the lamb who had just walked in. I can smell you from here. You're the smelliest creature in this place. Wilbur hung his head. His eyes grew wet with tears. Remember when I said we'd be looking for a turning point? I think we just found a turning point. In a turning point, we think about how a character was feeling, an event that happened that made the character start feeling another way. Wilbur was so excited talking about smelling food in the forest, and now he's crying. What was the turning point? What made Wilbur's feelings change? Turn and talk to somebody near you. Turning back in 3, and 2, and 1. So first Wilbur's feeling what when he's talking about the forest? What's he feeling? Shout it out, what's he feeling? Happy! Right? And then what happens? What causes his emotions to change? Brady, what did you find?
The lamb.
What about the lamb?
The lamb made him cry.
What did the lamb say? Can somebody who has a book find it for us? Did you find it, Chelsea? What did the lamb say?
The lamb said,
So he said he was smelly. So that's a turning point. Just like when we are studying our own emotions and other people's emotions, we can study the change of emotions and characters to better understand their feelings and their thoughts and their actions. Let's keep going. Charlotte noticed his embarrassment and she spoke sharply to the lamb. "Let Wilbur alone," she said. "He has a perfect right to smell considering his surroundings. You're no bundle of sweet peas yourself. Furthermore, you are interrupting a very pleasant conversation." What were we talking about, Wilbur, when we were so rudely interrupted? "Oh, I don't remember," said Wilbur. "It doesn't make any difference. Let's not talk anymore for a while, Charlotte. I'm getting sleepy. You go ahead and finish fixing your web, and I'll just lie here and watch you. It's a lovely evening." Wilbur stretched out on his side. Twilight settled over the Zuckerman's barn, and a feeling of peace. Fern knew it was almost supper time, but she couldn't bear to leave. Swallows, which are birds, passed on silent wings in and out of the doorways, bringing food to their young ones. From across the road, a bird sang, "Whoop-oo, whoop-oo." Lurvy sat down under an apple tree and lit his pipe. The animals sniffed the familiar smell of strong tobacco. Wilbur heard the trill of the tree toad and the occasional slamming of the kitchen door. All these sounds made him feel comfortable and happy, for he loved life and he loved to be a part of the world on a summer evening. But as he lay there, he remembered what the old sheep had told him. The thought of death came to him and he began to tremble with fear. "Charlotte," he said softly. "Yes, Wilbur?" "I don't want to die." "Of course you don't," said Charlotte in a comforting voice. "I just love it here in the barn," said Wilbur. "I love everything about this place." "Of course you do," said Charlotte. "We all do." The goose appeared, followed by her 7 goslings. They thrust their little necks out and kept up a musical whistling, like a tiny troop of pipers. Pipers are people who play a musical instrument called a pipe. Wilbur listened to the sound with the love in his heart. "Charlotte," he said. "Yes," said the spider. "Were you serious when you promised you would keep them from killing me?" "I was never more serious in my life. I'm not going to let you die, Wilbur." "How are you going to save me?" asked Wilbur, whose curiosity was very strong on this point. "Well," said Charlotte vaguely, "I don't really know, but I'm working on a plan." "That's wonderful," said Wilbur. "How is that plan coming along, Charlotte? Have you got very far with it? Is it coming along pretty well?" Wilbur was trembling again, but Charlotte was cool and collected. "Oh, it's coming all right," she said lightly. "The plan is still in its early stages and hasn't completely shaped up yet, but I'm working on it." "When do you work on it?" begged Wilbur. "When I'm hanging head down at the top of my web. That's when I do my thinking, because then all the blood is in my head." "I'd be only too glad to help in any way I can." "Oh, I'll work on it alone," said Charlotte. "I can think better if I'm alone." "All right," said Wilbur, "but don't fail to let me know if there's anything I can do to help, no matter how slight." "Well," replied Charlotte, "you must try to build yourself up. I want you to get plenty of sleep and stop worrying. Never hurry and never worry. Chew your food thoroughly and eat every bit of it, except you must leave just enough for Templeton. gain weight and stay, well, that's the way you can help. Keep fit and don't lose your nerve. Do you think you understand? Yes, I understand, said Wilbur. Go along to bed then, said Charlotte. Sleep is important. Wilbur trotted over to the darkest corner of his pen and threw himself down. He closed his eyes. In another minute, he spoke. Charlotte, he said. Yes, Wilbur. May I go out to my trough and see if I have any of my supper? I think I left just a tiny bit of mashed potato. Very well, said Charlotte, but I want you in bed again without delay. Wilbur started to race out to his yard. Slowly, slowly, said Charlotte. Never hurry and never worry. Wilbur checked himself and crept slowly to his trough. He found a bit of potato, chewed it carefully, swallowed it, and walked back to bed. He closed his eyes and was silent for a while. Charlotte, he said in a whisper. Yes. May I get a drink of milk? I think there's a few drops left in my trough. No, the trough is dry, and I want you to go to sleep. No more talking. Close your eyes and go to sleep. Wilbur shut his eyes. Fern got up from her stool and started for home, her mind full of everything she had just seen and heard. Good night, Charlotte, said Wilbur. Good night, Wilbur. There was a pause. Good night, Charlotte. Good night, Wilbur. Good night. Good night.
He just wants to keep
So, right now, instead of having a discussion, we are going to, that was a long chapter. We are going to be doing a close read in your packets. Let me see if I can get this over. Be patient, it's coming. You are going to be getting out, eyes on me, you're going to be getting out your Charlotte's Web close reading packets that you have, and you're going to be turning to chapter 9. But here's the tricky part, are you ready? You're going to cross out the part at the top. We're not going to be looking at that question today. I'm going to be leaving this up here, and it has your steps on it.
That's our steps?
Those are not your steps.
What's that exploration thing that looks like Minecraft?
What?
Oh, that was just,
Your directions will be right up here, so we can make them more clear. Who can read our first direction for us? Nevaeh, please read our first direction for
read
us.
the passage and annotation using your annotation paper.
You're going to annotate using one of your annotation papers. Yes, Lucilia, want to read our second one for us?
Yes. Put a star next to the events that caused the turning point.
Do you remember when we talked about a turning point? There's going to be a turning point in this passage, which is from chapter 9. And you're going to put a what next to the turning point? A star. And then the third direction, read it for us, Sophia.
On the side, how did you know this was a turning point? Use evidence from the text to support your
Decision. And then it says at the end, when you're done, you can read quietly to yourself until I say it's time to start daily 5. So, are we going to be answering this question on the side?
No.
Nope. We're going to be giving evidence for how you chose your turning point. Anybody have any questions? Sasha? We'll deal with that in a second. Does anyone not have a book? Perfect. You can go back and get started. I see Israel found his close reading packet. And turning to chapter 9. It's in your folder. chapter 2, turn past chapter 3, and then you will see it. Chapter 9, close reading. Page 62. You can get started. Okay, so here's your question. What are you going to do? Until you find which chapter. Close reading for which chapter do we read today? Chapter 9. Can you find chapter 9? What's your first one? Oh, wait, here it is. Chapter 9. There you go. So what's your first direction? Hang on a second. Who is Harry? Do they have those annotation papers? Yes. Yes. Most likely you're not going to pay attention to those. You can put them in your folders. They're in here. So right now, you should be paying attention to your first direction. You should be reading the passage and annotating using your little annotation paper. That's what you should be doing right now.
All these sounds made it feel comfortable and happy. But he loved life and loved to be a part of the world on a summer evening. But as he was there, he remembered what the old sheep had told him. The thought of death came to him, and he began to tremble with fear. You're remembering what happened next. So in this passage, it says put a star next to the event that caused the turning point. What in this passage made Wilbur feel something worse? And then on the side, you're going to write about how did you know? How did you know that was going to change? So let's see your first direction. Did you read the passage? Yeah? Okay, check. Did you read it? Where's your annotation? So when you're reading it, you're looking for major points. Anything that a major point is something that is an important part. A major point. And then when you're going through, remember you're going to put a star next to the event that caused the turning point. Did you think you found the turning point when you were reading? Yeah? What did you think the turning point was?
That he remembered what the old sheep was doing.
Oh, so you think you could put a star next to that? Or next to the event that caused the turning point.
So,
And then on the side, you're going to write, how did you know this was a turning point? And this stuff in the text to help you understand it.
If you haven't already found the turning point, we're going to have to wrap this up so that we can get to daily 5. I'd like you to stop annotating and instead skip to the part where you put a star. Right now, look at your paper and make sure that you have a star next to the part that is the event that caused the turning point. Look at your paper right now. Do you have a star on your paper? Thumbs up. Thumbs up. You have a star on your paper. And then on the side, make sure you get a chance to jot some information down. How did you know this is the turning point? Write it right on the side. Use evidence from the text to support your decision. I'm going to give you 2 more minutes. So just a quick note on the side will work. Make sure you have a star and a quick note on the side.
Star here. I want to see your star next to the event that caused the turning point. So I want to see your star next to something in the text. And then it happens.
Take 1 more minute to finish up your thoughts.
What does it say to do when you're done? It's right there at the bottom. Okay.
Okay, I want you to make sure that your name is on the front of your blue packet, and I'm actually going to collect them today. So table leaders, can you, not the whole folder, I just want the blue packet. Table leaders, please collect your blue packets and go put them in the finished work bin. I'm going to collect them today. I'd like to look at them. Make sure your name's on the front so we know who to give it back to tomorrow. No. Think about it. Cindy and Sarah, we're going to turn those in. Darren, do you have a question?
No.
Oh.